Welcome to Mind Yourself, a podcast sharing real life stories from real people, alongside conversations about mental health and emotional well-being. Listener discretion is advised, as this episode may include themes some listeners may find distressing. Wherever you're joining us from, whether you're walking, driving, or taking a quiet moment for yourself, you're very welcome here. Let's get started. So we welcome Christina Goetz to the podcast. Welcome, Christina. You're very welcome.
Thank you so much.
So Christina is a holistic life coach, hypnotherapist, and EMDR therapist. So Christina, I'm going to ask you today about the nervous system, and it's something that we hear about a lot, I think, in the media at the moment, the nervous system. But what actually is the nervous system?
Yeah, so the nervous system is the control center of your whole life, of your whole body. So body and mind work together. So your nervous system regulates your emotions, stress response, your breathing, so a lot of things. So the nervous system actually itself is very, very important and very, very complex. But yeah, simply down to how you're feeling today, how your breathing is, how your heart rate is. So all of that and even more goes into the nervous system.
And why is it important for us to understand this?
It's especially important because it regulates your stress responses. So a lot of people are suffering with anxiety, for example, and depression. So for example, if your nervous system is dysregulated, you can suffer from a tremendous amount of things like sleep problems, your digestive system. That's also something the nervous system regulates. So it's so important to have a healthy nervous system and to have a balanced nervous system, because otherwise your body and your mind combined, they're always going to be in a kind of like a fight or flight mode. And that's not where you want to be, because that's not a nice place to live from 24/7. But so many people are stuck in a fight or flight mode without even realizing it. So that's why healthy nervous system regulation, because you have unhealthy nervous system regulation and healthy nervous system regulation, that's why a healthy nervous system is so important. And also to fight off any kind of immune system responses, to fight off toxins, to fight off any illnesses you might have. So if your nervous system is on point and well working, you also feel it in your body and also your mind. Your body is calmer and your mind is calmer as a result of it.
You mentioned the fight or flight system there. Can you describe that to us, please?
Yeah, so a lot of people find themselves and throughout life, naturally sometimes, willingly or unwillingly, in a fight or flight response. That's pretty much so. For example, if you are facing, let's say you're supposed to go on stage, right? So some people would be in a fight or flight mode because naturally they're anxious, they don't know what's going on, it's a big audience. That's kind of like, that would be kind of a more normal reaction, but you can also describe it as when someone is in a toxic relationship, for example. You're always on edges around someone, so you kind of develop a fight or flight mode where your heart is breathing faster than normal. Your thoughts are racing and you freeze. And that also happens a lot with phobias as well. So people, for example, who are afraid of spiders. So your nervous system's dysregulated because you're just literally freeze, and your eyes are becoming bigger, your heart rate is going faster than normal, and then your whole body gets tense. And that's when you find your nervous system in a fight or flight mode, and your body doesn't flow naturally through your brain or through your body, and that's a dysregulation in itself.
Okay. Do you think, Christina, that the way we live our lives, the modern life, do you think that is it important to think about that in terms of how regulated we are with the way that we live?
Yes, absolutely. Especially with these days social media involved, and we are all guilty of it, including myself. Scrolling is a massive problem for your brain, and also the way we pick up our phones in the middle of the night. So we're kind of constantly alert, and we're not really relaxing the way we're supposed to relax. We don't really have like a pause button. So sometimes, that can affect, especially the world we live in right now with social media, with the constant, I have to respond to everything, I have to respond to this text, to this message, to this WhatsApp. It's too much. So that's why a lot of people, they were like, I'm having enough. I'm going on a vacation. I don't use my phone. I need a social media detox because it's too much. It's too much going on, and it's too much for the brain to comprehend. So we're not wired to obviously all the time go, 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 do. And the world we live in is more stressful because of also, it's down to the food we consume, what we hear, which foods are good, bad, etc., etc. There's so much information out there available to us 24/7 if you want to, that it overstimulates the nervous system. So you have to be, even like myself, you have to be very careful on how much time you consume on the internet, how much time you consume on your phone. Do you actually have a downtime for yourself, or a practice where like, okay, I'm not looking at the phone right now? And you see it in people. People are stressed. Like, just go into a gym, which I am a gym member and I do go regularly, but just look around, pay attention, look around. Everyone heads down and on their phone. And that's also not good for your neck, because then if you're always doing this is also not good for your posture. And that also blocks the blood flow from your brain. That also communicates with the nervous system. There's a lot going on. Look at a bus stop. Everyone is doing this. This can't be good on a long-term basis, but we're all guilty of it. So we have to be very mindful of what we're consuming, what we're doing, what we let into our bodies and also into our brains.
So physiologically, we're not wired to live that way at all, are we?
No.
And what happens when we kind of find ourselves in sustained stress responses like fight or flight is we can suffer from depression, from anxiety, from burnout. And that's what you help your clients with. But it's also, these are all things you've experienced yourself in your own life, aren't they?
Yes.
You grew up with an alcoholic father, which I suppose threatened your sense of safety. So what was it like growing up for you, and what was it like experiencing depression, anxiety and burnout for yourself?
Yeah, so when I was growing up in a home, so I was growing up with an alcoholic father, but I didn't understand it until later on in life. So I was actually thinking about this morning when I was in bed. I was like, my life took very interesting turns when I look back on it. So the way you can describe, so if you literally look at my CV, I have a very unnatural CV compared to most people. So a lot of jumps, a lot of changing jobs for a long time. And I couldn't make sense of it. It wasn't until years later until I realized, oh, this is why, because your nervous system was dysregulated from when you were a child. Because growing up with an alcoholic parent where you're always on edge around someone, and that became my normal because I didn't understand it. It was just normal as a child growing up like that. The problem is exactly what you mentioned. The problem is you don't create an inner safety. So for me, it was changing careers, changing jobs. I didn't feel safe no matter where I was. So change for me was in a way good. It threw off my nervous system anytime. That's the thing. It did throw off my nervous system, but I needed the challenge because I did not feel safe no matter in which job I was, which relationship I was in at the time. So I had a lot of jumps from relationships to jobs, and it took me a long time to figure out what was wrong with me. And I was depressed for a while, and I had anxiety issues, I had panic issues, but thankfully that was all more in my 20s. That was after my parents separated back then. And it wasn't until mid-30s, so quite a while. I turned 43, so mid-30s. It wasn't until quite a while where I was like, I'm done with this. I can't do this anymore. I can't live in this fight or flight mode, because it was so bad at some point that, some people, when they have depression, it can be as bad as some people can't even go out of the house, that they can't shower, or they can't look after themselves. Yeah. Thankfully, that was not my case, because I always had like this little fighter within me. So I was like, okay, they say I have depression, but this can't be it. This is not how my life's supposed to go. So after a while of just seeking different therapy options, after years of therapy, I was like, you know what? For me personally, talk therapy wasn't for me. I was talked out. I was exhausted to talk about my own life at some point. I couldn't hear it anymore. And then that's when I actually, a couple years ago, wrote my own book. So, which I just self-published, but I mainly wrote the book for myself.
That was Truth Be Told.
Yes. And that was very healing. So just to write it for myself, it never really took off, but that was never the goal. Just the journey of writing my story down in different chapters in different countries, that was very, very healing. And it wasn't until I really sat down with myself and put everything on paper and wrote every little thing down, and until I then hit that publish button, until I was really like, oh, now I can see where these patterns come from, and now I know what hasn't worked for me in the past. And going the holistic route, which then I became the holistic life coach and the hypnotherapist, and I really much looked at all these modalities. I'm like, therapy, no. Medications, no. Whatever they recommended, I was like, no. I'm not the typical fit in a box, take the pills, and go on and live your life kind of person. I wanted to go digger, because I'm someone, my brain needs to understand the root cause of something. That's just how I am. I'm not giving up until I know it makes sense for me, okay? So, and it wasn't until doing all these extra therapies, I found a holistic practitioner in Germany who was very good, and she introduced me to some form of oxygen therapy. So like you had to literally got put on a mask and you had to breathe oxygen into it. So I tried that, and that really helped. That regulated the nervous system. So we come down to the simple things. Breathing. How important is your breathing? Because another thing, when you're in fight or flight mode, you're breathing shallow. That's another thing, and that's how you stay in a dysregulated state. And that's how I got into meditation. And I got my meditation teacher diploma finished. And that's when everything started to become better, when I started paying attention to my body and how I'm breathing. And I still remember I sat at the doctor's office in Germany, again, crying. I'm like, what's wrong with me? And I had a list of symptoms, what was wrong with me. And they checked everything from blood work, CT scan, MRI, God knows what, nothing wrong. And I was almost like determined there needs to be something wrong. This is not normal the way I'm feeling. And it was all down, and I hope I'm pronouncing this correct, as psychosomatic symptoms. Mm-hmm. So symptoms that feel as real as something is physically wrong with you, and the brain understands it as well, but there is not physical anything wrong with you. It's all in the brain. And that's how I got into hypnosis. I'm like, well, it's all in the brain, then I have to heal my brain.
And Christina, for anybody who's listening to you telling your story there and that resonates with this living in the fight or flight response and with a dysregulated nervous system, can they learn to regulate their nervous system?
Yes, 100%. And I always say that to my clients, because if I could, after such a long time, I'm sure everyone else can. But this is the most important thing. You need to find the modalities that work for you. If, let's say, acupuncture works for me, maybe it doesn't work for someone else. But then I keep suggesting, keep digging what works for you. Try to find different therapy options, talk to different people, get different holistic practitioners involved if you believe in that. Because I know a lot of people, they just get straight put on medication. Okay. And I know there's a reason for it. I've personally years ago tried it. It wasn't for me. I wasn't myself, but that's just my personal journey. And I was like, no, I need to find a way to overcome this. And I was without medication, and I'm fine today. I mean, obviously driving here gave me a bit of an anxiety, and obviously doing the podcast, but in a good way. That's what I was saying to you, the stage fright quotation marks. That's a good, your nervous system being a bit activated. I'm like, oh, what's going on here? I'm nervous. But that's the good stuff. That's what you want your nervous system to feel. But if you feel constantly like that, then your nervous system is off. That's when you need help, and help with regulating your nervous system.
So everything you're saying there is so true and really resonates with us. Four Swans is built on that foundation that everybody heals in different ways. Yeah. And that's why we offer so many different therapies and so many different approaches, so people can find what works for them. So the avenue that you then chose to, I suppose, develop for yourself was holistic life coaching or hypnosis and EMDR.
Yes.
For anybody who's not familiar with hypnosis, hypnotherapy and EMDR, can you explain how those therapies work and what it is that you do to help people?
Yeah, so hypnotherapy, also known as hypnosis, is a state that someone, like a hypnotherapist in my case, puts you under. So it's a deep state of relaxation with me talking to them and pretty much leading them into like a deep state of relaxation where the brain is relaxed. Because when the brain is relaxed, it pretty much understands what I'm trying to tell you. So let's say somebody comes to me for anxiety or sleep issues. So I'd probably lead them into a relaxation state, and then through words, I'll tailor specific words and affirmations for them and speak pretty much life into them, good positive affirmations into them. And that's the difference. For example, when you listen to a hypnosis recording, well, first of all, that's not personal. So, and second of all, it also works, but when you come to see me in person, you have the relaxation part in the room and you feel the energy, and the words sink in, the music sinks in, and you have the body experience of deep relaxation. And that's the interesting part. So a lot of people think, oh, when you're under hypnosis, you're like sleepy when you wake up. No, you're actually refreshed when you wake up. That's the difference. Because the meditation is supposed to give you a certain level of relaxation. Then you wake up and you probably are sleepy. With hypnosis, it's not like that. It's just, it relaxes the brain so much in order for me to feed you the right information to the brain or to the nervous system. So the mind understands, and when the mind understands, the whole body understands. And there's that misconception about hypnotherapy and that's show hypnosis, by the way, where people think, oh, you're going to make me bark like a dog and you're going to make me do this and this and that. I'm like, yeah, no, if I could do that, I'd be rich by now. Like, nobody can do that. Like, I can't do anything you don't want me to do. That's also not the purpose of hypnotherapy. It's like we're pretty much tapping into, I think it's the theta brain waves. So we're just tapping into a different level in your brain that's open to change. And it actually takes the brain 4 to 6 weeks, and that's backed up by science, to actually implement change. That's why some people say, oh, I'll try hypnotherapy. You feel a benefit after one session, absolutely. I've seen that in all my clients. But if you want long-term success, especially for anxiety, depression, weight loss, sleep problems, it's better to have a few sessions because it does take a while.
So similar in some respects to counselling and psychotherapy, whereby it's a process.
Exactly.
You can't come for one session and expect to be fixed or cured.
Yes. Yeah. So my favorite example is, well, if you go to the gym and you tell your personal trainer you want a six pack. So yeah, if he gives you the instructions but you don't do the abs or whatever it is, you're not going to get a six pack. Like, you have to put in the work. And it's the same with hypnotherapy. It's not, well, the good thing is you don't really have to put in work. You just have to lay there and be open and relaxed. That's your job. My job is to do the rest. So that's the thing with hypnotherapy. And like I said, there is still that conception out there that we make people do crazy things. That's not true. I couldn't make you anything you don't want to.
And what about EMDR then? It stands for eye movement
desensitization and reprocessing. Thank you for saying that, because I was like, oh God, do I have to say it because it's hard? I do like the EMDR, but I don't like to pronounce it. So yeah, the EMDR is quite cool. So I've learned that. I've got trained in that after the hypnotherapy. I was like, what is a shortcut? I was Googling, what is the shortcut to heal trauma? And EMDR came up, and I'm like, I did hear this before. It sounds quite good. Maybe I should get into it. And I'm thankfully I did, because it does help for people who have been exposed to long-term trauma. So this can either be, so let's say you've been in an abusive relationship, or you've had a terrible car accident, you've lost someone, and you're like stuck in a grief process. Like, no matter where, like, trauma is very complex, okay? So you can develop, like, everyone has some kind of trauma. And it's the interesting part, trauma is actually always rooted, unless it's an accident, obviously. But if it's something relational, it's mostly rooted. You find the cause of the trauma in your childhood. And when you go back, so you can also go back and regress someone, for example, through trauma in a hypnotherapy session. So you can, because some people don't remember, there are some people, they black out, so they don't remember the trauma. So, for example, if you know you had a trauma, you're constantly on edge, but you don't know why, sometimes there's a trauma linked to that. because I sometimes have that as well, where people come to me, they're like, I don't know what I come for today, but I feel anxious, I feel this and this and this. And that's why I evaluate them in the first session, because sometimes without them not knowing, there's a trauma behind the anxiety. So then that's when EMDR and hypnotherapy, that's why I combine them sometimes, the two modalities, and that's brilliant.
And with the EMDR, Christina, if I was to come for an EMDR
Yeah.
session, what does that look like? What would you be expecting me to do? How do you do the eye movement work with somebody?
Yeah. So typically you don't have to do anything besides just being open and being present. So that's a good thing. And by deciding you want to work on the trauma, that's already a good step, because let's face it, it's not easy to work on trauma. Like going into trauma and actually sitting in a therapy room and talking about your trauma is probably the hardest thing you can do, because it opens up a can of worms. So this is different with EMDR. So I'm not going to talk to them about the whole traumatic story, because then we would sit here for hours sometimes, depending on what trauma you have. Okay. I'll basically be like, okay, so we go through like a brief history. Sometimes I spot the trauma because they haven't spotted, or they were like, well, I know this is because, for example, I've been abused as a child. So some people also know their trauma. So you have a bit of a mixed clientele. So when somebody comes to me who's like, well, I've been, let's say, abused as a child and blah, blah, and I have, let's say, a father wound because of that. Can we do EMDR? I'd be like, yeah. And they basically don't have to do much. So we are just briefly describing, because they already know where the trauma comes from. They describe their most traumatic moment, but before that, I'll put them in a relaxation state. So that can be mostly sitting or lying down. We just take a few breaths, just making sure the nervous system is calm, your brain waves are calm, and you feel relaxed. And then I'll ask them from a scale from 1 to 10. I'll do that before, sorry. I'll ask them from a scale from 1 to 10, how do you rate your trauma now? Then we will close the eyes, we'll relax, and then with them having their eyes closed, I briefly read back to them the moment that trauma started. So I'll do a take notes, and they're just imagining that little piece, not the whole piece, but the little piece that's important to them. Then they're going to open their eyes, and some people are already in a fight or flight mode when they open their eyes, and some are not. So it really depends on where the trauma is still stored in the body. I mean, I can determine that they wouldn't, but they open their eyes, and then I'll be like, so, okay, now what we're going to do is you just follow my eye movement. So my finger with your eyes. So it's bilateral eye stimulation. And depending on what I see, sometimes I'll be like, okay, you're safe. Like I reaffirm them while they're doing this, because for some of them it's easy, and for some they have like tears, they try to breathe, and like, okay, and then they relax, and then they close their eyes. We have another relaxation moment, and they open their eyes, and then I'll be like, how are you feeling now? So some people are like, oh, that's intense, but I feel better. Some people are like, oh, I feel great. So it really depends. And then I basically like, so rate this for me again, your trauma, your feeling, your reaction. And usually it goes down. Mm-hmm. If it doesn't go down after the first round, you do a couple rounds. So you want to end up in between 4 or 5 instead of 10. If you want to go down, you determine that on how the client is in that moment. If I feel that's too much today, I'll pause. Or I'll be like, okay, now we're going to do a nice hypnosis to relax you. It's really powerful. It's really, really nice.
So for anybody who's listening on the podcast, you're having your index finger out,
yes, my index finger.
You're moving it from left to right.
Left to right, or it depends. You can go in circles as well. I do it very intuitively because I know my clients. So when I see their eye blinks, for example, which not everyone has, then I know there's something stored. So if the right eye blinks, there's something stored in the left side of the brain still, and vice versa. So it's just what I picked up. I'm not sure if they probably didn't train me on this, but that's what I observed and picked up over time. And depending on, where my client is, I'll either keep going or be like, are you okay? Do you want to do another round? And they were like, most of them, they go for it. Or sometimes I'll be like, well, just pause for now, come back next week. And I do, like I said, after the EMDR, a bit of a relaxation part. So I'm not going to leave them destroyed, That's not my goal. So I've never had anyone, as far as I can remember, thank God, that left my place like worse than they came in. So thankfully. So EMDR is very powerful, and it's the nicest thing when, let's say I do a second round with eye movement stimulation, and I can see all of a sudden they go from shaking to non-shaking. And that's the body's response of the nervous system starting to process this intense trauma, these intense feelings, and to relax. This is where you want to go, actually. That's nice. If I see that, that's nice too. But it's also good if I see, oh my God, they're like this. Because then I know, okay, we still need to work a little bit on this one if you're willing to. And most people are happy to work on it because, like I said, they don't come with their full story. Because that's what everyone thinks, like, oh my God, I have to tell her my whole story. And I had a client who came with a whole list. And I was like, I don't need the list. I just need that one incident. It's the same, like I said, with the car accident, which I had as well. Loss of a baby. Whatever is traumatically stored in your body, that you can literally heal with EMDR. It's really nice. And if you combine it with hypnosis, that's very powerful.
I think it's fantastic, as Antonia says, that there's so many different ways to heal. And sometimes it's about finding that one that works for you.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah. And Christina, can I ask this question? How do you mind yourself?
Yeah, so my mindful practices would be I try to go into nature as much as I can, getting some natural vitamin D, sunlight, quotation marks, depending on where I am. If I'm in Ireland, maybe I get a little bit less sunshine in versus when I'm in Germany or in the US, because I travel quite a lot. But yeah, basically how I mind myself is like nature calms me down. Daily walks. I do go to the gym. I just introduced a bit more muscle training, which I feel stronger in myself since I'm doing that. Like I said, that's just me, not for everyone. Then the other thing would really help me over the years, journaling everything out, all the crazy, all the bad days. So that really helps. Sometimes, what else helps me? Yeah, sometimes I listen to meditation or a podcast, depending on what it is. But yeah, basically nature, journaling, eating well. I've cut out a lot of sugar out of my diet, and I bake and cook mostly myself because I'm addicted to protein balls. So I found out how to make them myself. So that's quite good. Hydration, which is the usual, which... guilty as charged. I do struggle sometimes with it, but yeah, hydration, some physical workout if you can, yoga, journaling, and being very mindful of what you watch and consume. I can tell you that because you wouldn't find me sitting at home watching Netflix every night. I barely do that, actually. Okay, I scroll on social media and I post my stuff, but I barely watch anything. So little bit mindful of what you watch and how much you consume as well. So I'd say a good combination of the mental, the physical, and the spiritual, and then I pray. Some people do. They do their morning prayers, so I pray. When I feel really stuck, for some people it's God, whatever works for everyone. For some people it's the universe. That's why I always say I'm pretty open, whatever works for everyone. But I feel like if you do pray, it does help. So it calms my mind and my soul. So I found that quite helpful.
So anybody who's listening to the podcast who something you spoke about there has resonated with them and they'd like to get in contact with you, how would they do that?
Well, first of all, 4 Swans. So I'm open for online sessions at the moment because I'm down in Enfield and I'm going to move countries in a couple of months. So definitely online. So through you guys, 4 Swans. And if anyone wants to follow me on social media, Instagram, Christina Goetz, Goetz, and then Holistic Life Coach, or just Google hypnotherapist in Enfield County Meet. Facebook, I have a Facebook group called The Healing Exchange, because I just changed that name, so people can join there. So I always post like helpful content and stuff. But social media or just Google or through you guys.
Christina, thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you, you too. It was
really
lovely talking to you. Yeah, and thanks for all the questions. I loved answering it. So thank you so much.
Thank you. That is it for today's episode of Mind Yourself. If something in this conversation has resonated with you, share it with someone who might need to hear it, because these are the conversations that matter. Don't forget to follow or subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you're enjoying the podcast, a quick rating or review really helps us to reach more people. So until next time, mind yourself.